and welcome to Doubles and Trebles in association with dartsnews.com. The Super Series 1 finished less than an hour ago, and Pieman and myself are here to give instant reaction to what happened over the 4 days. And very quickly, the 4 winners of the Players' Championships days 1, 2, 3 and 4 were Joe Cullen on Thursday, actually winning back-to-back Players' Championship events, although they were approximately 3.5 months apart. Day 2 went to Callan Rydz for his debut PDC winning event that we're obviously going to cover. Day 3 was the story of the week, or story of the dart season so far. Raymond van Barneveld back in the winner's enclosure after God knows how long. Fair play to him there. And on day 4, Jonny Clayton got a deserved win on day 4. And yeah, like I say, that happened less than an hour ago. And that's what we're reacting to. I've got Pieman with me as usual. Pieman, there's only one place to start for me, and that's with Jonny Clayton.
Yeah, cheers, Adam. Well, it's got to be Jonny Clayton, hasn't it? Over these 4 days, he's been the man to take away from this event. And he came into it as the man, really. He won the Masters. A very, a career-defining performance, really. I mean, this is a man that's won Players' Championships before. He's won on the tour. Obviously winning that World Cup with Gerwyn Price. And that seems to have been a turning point for Jonny Clayton. I mean, he seems to have a real belief about himself now. He's always been a player capable of beating anyone. But whether he really believed that he could come to events with a high-class field and win them was questionable. Even in the World Cup, I thought he looked like a little bit shaky, certainly in the early stages. But Price kind of pulled him through, and then he turned up in the final. They got that win. And since then, he hasn't looked back. I mean, I thought he was brilliant in the Worlds. He obviously would have beaten Joe Cullen if it wasn't for Joe taking out a fantastic double-double finish in a last leg decider. Lost nothing in defeat there. Then he turns up to the Masters, wins the Masters, gets that Premier League spot. So he came here in great form, but it couldn't have been more impressive, really. Every single day, he was so solid. Losing finalist and probably the best player of the day, to be honest. Certainly on a par with Joe Cullen on day 1. And then again in day 2 to get to the final, lose the final. He'll be disappointed to lose that second final against Callan Rydz. That was a good game. Both players had chances. And Rydz, he had to take out a very good finish to win that Rydz. More on that later. But I mean, Clayton, again, superb. Must have been wondering what he's got to do to win a title the next day.
Both on deciding legs, Pieman. Days 1 and 2, he's made the final.
8-7. Yeah. And then, so 1 leg away, could have easily had 3 titles out of these 4 days, quite easily. Even the third day where he didn't make the final, he averaged 103 in defeat in his quarterfinal. So, I mean, he's just been flawless all week. And never has anyone deserved the title more than Jonny Clayton deserved that one today. If he left this week without a trophy to show for it, it would have been scandalous, to be honest. So, delighted to see him get over the line in what was a great match against Damon Heta, and more on him in a minute because he had a tremendous day, Damon Heta, and a good week, to be honest. But Jonny Clayton, the big one for me is, at what point do we start pricing Jonny Clayton up with the big 3, with MVG, Gerwyn, Price, Peter Wright? Because MVG, massive question marks. Gerwyn Price, ear infection, hasn't played the last 2 days, question mark. Peter Wright, massive question marks.
Well, we'll come on to that, boy.
There's no question marks over Jonny Clayton. So I think we could soon see him. I can't wait to see these UK Open markets. I really can't.
Yeah, and I think we'll get UK Open markets maybe Tuesday or Wednesday ahead of the Friday start. But yeah, I mean, you've covered it perfectly well. But just to reiterate, this is 4 128-person tournaments taking place back to back to back to back, and Jonny Clayton has made 3 finals and lost 2 of them on a deciding leg, won 1 of them, made a quarterfinal the other day on day 3 with an 103 average. Just incredible. I mean, I don't know what's happened. I can't put my finger on it. There's a massive uptake on form, but I'm a massive Jonny Clayton fan. You will see me tweeting about it for years about loving the ferret. And maybe that's something that I've not really actually portrayed on this channel. I was thinking about that the other day, but humongous Jonny Clayton fan. Just with his likable demeanour, and he's an average kind of bloke, as a lot of them are. But for me, he's literally gone from a part-time player, literally, because his plastering in South Wales is well documented. But now he's a winner, and I know that's an obvious thing to say, and I don't know what has switched, but he is winning games. You're expecting him to win games. I don't know whether he's expecting to win games. He is doing so, but I don't know whether something has changed. It might have been the World Cup, as you said, Pieman, and that felt really quite a big moment for the two guys. Gerwyn Price was obviously the headline act out of the two at the time, and would still be now. He's world number one and world champion. But yeah, could well have been a turning point. He's not looked back since then.
Can I just say on Clayton as well, I mentioned the World Cup as a turning point, but I still think he came into this week with question marks over his head, because in that Masters final, he was playing Mervyn King, another man who has not been a TV winner, always been a good performer, but hasn't got that pedigree in TV finals, I suppose. And you could maybe argue that, maybe Clayton was fortunate that in the big final, he was playing someone like Mervyn King as opposed to a Van Gerwen or whatever. But I mean, all those question marks have gone now over the last 4 days. He's just shown that he is consistently up there with the best in the world. I will say it, coming into this call, I think Jonny Clayton was 28-1 for the Premier League. That could look like such a wrong price in a few weeks' time. I tell you, it really could, especially with the no crowds in, because who's handling the lack of crowds better than Jonny Clayton at the moment? Nobody.
We will mention Joe Cullen in more deeper in a few minutes, but as you said, Pieman, I think that we've now, as of this Super Series number 1, the 4 days, we've got a number 4 and 5, if you like, established now.
Definitely.
Just behind the big three. There's question marks over all three of the big three. We've got Cullen and Clayton now, well established here. Just a quick note on Heta, who made the final today, Pieman. You alluded to it, Jesus Christ. Damon Heta's made the final today in Super Series 1, day 4. He's beat, in no particular order, Raymond van Barneveld, Michael van Gerwen, Mervyn King, Big Dirk, Snake. I mean, ridiculous, to be honest. I think there was a decent final, but when Clayton put his foot down around 5-4-ish, and he went on from there, and Heta couldn't really keep with him from there. But yeah, superb Damon Heta. I mean, it's nothing new. We're aware of him. I put him up for the Worlds. He failed at the first hurdle. He's won the Breakout Player of the Year in 2020, or an award along those lines. Yeah, but what fair play to him. And he played quite well all week, and then made the final on the final day.
Yeah, Heta was. There was a few players like this. Maybe the bare form. If you just looked at the results quickly, you would think, oh yeah, no, he's gone out early. Nothing particularly impressive about that. But you dig a little deeper. There's some players that have gone out in unfortunate circumstances. The draw undoubtedly plays a big part in these players' events. The draw comes out an hour before play commences, and it's one thing that I would take away from it going forward. And I would certainly say, from a punter's perspective, you need to be factoring in that draw a little bit. It can have a massive effect. Not necessarily that if you fancy a player in good form, that they won't be in good form, but there's no doubt that a player can be in a nice part of the draw. Damon Heta, on the other hand, was in a horrible part of the draw. You looked at the players he had to face and in that order, and you just thought it was, never impossible with a man of his ability, but improbable that he would come through it. Not one of the big boys would take him down at some point. And that just shows the class of the man. There's a difference with Damon Heta compared to a lot of these new lads breaking through. He doesn't have that fear against the big players. His game doesn't drop at all. He never wilts. You know what Damon Heta's going to do. He's going to hang in there. He's a bit of a slugger. He can be playing pretty poorly, and then his opponent puts in a big shot, and he responds with a big shot. Yeah. He's very much, he plays the player rather than the board. I think he's a reactive player, and that as soon as you get into a battle with him, you're in trouble. When he gets beat is generally when someone is just very confident in their own game and they're just playing good darts and he can't quite go with them. But once it gets into a bit of a slugfest, I wouldn't want to be against Heta, and I think that's why I think he'll win tournaments in time, Heta, because he is a slugger. He can hang in there. He can respond at key moments. I'm still not sure whether legs or set suits him better. I think legs is potentially the way to go with him, because I feel like set play, he doesn't quite have the spikes in his game that some players do. Some players can kick through the gears in set play and reel sets off, and suddenly it's a big task. He's a very steady player, and I think these legs, a UK Open could be absolutely perfect for him. So without getting too carried away, very impressive, Damon Heta.
Joe Cullen, talk to me, Pieman. Obviously, he was behind Clayton, the secondary headliner.
I said to you, much to your amusement, I think, because I do say this about a lot of players. But I said, is Joe Cullen a 50-1 shot for the World Championships? The way he's playing, to me, he looks like he should be, in that. I look at some of the players in that World Championship market. The fact of the matter is, the World Championship market right now, you have to scroll down the page to see Jonny Clayton and Joe Cullen. That's wrong to me. They are in the top 8 runners. for the World. Make no mistake about it, because they're the men in form right now, and they're the men to be beaten right now. So I know Gary Anderson and Michael Smith and Rob Cross and Glenn Durrant have got more pedigree. They've maybe won more big events, and they've been there for a long time. But if we're looking at the here and now, and we're looking at going forward, Joe Cullen, much like Jonny Clayton, is someone who's come to a key moment in his career. He's put in some big performances, and now he looks like he's got that belief instilled in him as well. I mean, I don't think he could. That Van Gerwen loss in the World Championships, some people say, oh, typical Cullen to chuck it in the last leg. I didn't see it like that at all. He had two very well thrown darts to win that match. That to me looked like he finally realised, you know what, I can compete with Van Gerwen and Price and Wright. I'm good enough. He's carried that into the Players' Championship, as you quite rightly said. Won the one before Christmas. He's won the one, his first one to start this year. Again, very unlucky, like Clayton, not to do even more. I mean, he was in the latter stages again today, latter stages again yesterday. So, I mean, he's a very tough man to shake, Joe Cullen. And I think the World Championships and the UK Open, he's got to be on everyone's radar.
I've got very little evidence for what I'm about to say, but in comparison to Jonny Clayton, Joe Cullen hints to me that he could have a dip for a month or two or three. Whereas I think Clayton will be it's a very, very good level, will be steady at that level. Joe Cullen could well prove me wrong, but that's my thoughts on that one. I'll probably reserve in a bit of comment, but Barney, we've got to talk about him, Pieman. He's come from Q School the other week, where he didn't actually win a day at Q School, Barney, even though he was a big favourite to do so. He came through top of the order of merit in the European section, and yeah, he's turned up here. I mean, he would have been 100 to 1, probably more.
I think he was 100 to 1, yeah.
And he beat Joe Cullen in the final on day 3. I mean, it's an incredible story. It is genuinely. I mean, I don't particularly like the Barney story, but fair play to him.
Well, you can't knock him, can you? I mean, what he's done, and it wasn't an easy run either. It wasn't an easy run either. He had to beat. He started straight off with Christoph Kick, who's the Pole, who's one of the players I'm keeping an eye on now, because I think he's showing that he could compete. Barney made pretty light work of him. Then, to be fair, I mean, look, we've seen it on all 4 days. You've got to dodge a couple of bullets to win these things. There's too many games, too many quality players. You're not just going to sail through. He had to dodge match starts against Rob Cross, but other than that, I mean, he was a very worthy winner. Ian White he faced, and I thought Ian White would give him serious problems because he was having a great day, Ian White, and he had a good week, to be honest. But Barney just dug in, hit his shots at the right times. There was a little bit of controversy. He was sucking on a sweet, and the referee told him to do it more quietly or whatever. It had bothered Ian White, I think, but White kind of laughed it off. But I mean, Barney, he just looked so focused. I mean, again, beat Mervyn King 6-5. That was another impressive victory. And to win these crunch legs, it just shows you where he's at in his game. I think we've got to say that Barney's still got it. Whether he can produce that on a regular basis is now the question that needs to be answered. But it does make a bit of a mockery of the 100 to 1 that was about, really, because he clearly hasn't lost his ability. It's just the temperament that's the question, isn't it, really? And
he looks in better physical shape than what we've seen him for years.
Well, he does. He does. He's come mentally and physically. He looks in a great place at the moment. But you're just going on the form book, aren't you? Towards the back end of his career, he became a very unreliable character, and you're just wondering whether he's past that or not.
Well, we said in our preview, Pieman, that there would be a whole host of players out of the 128 at the Super Series #1 that have not played competitively since the World Championships. You know, the best part of 2 months, 2.5 months. We call them the mid-range kind of pack, and they kind of, you know, some of the more noticeable, names that we know of rose to the top, if you like, on day 4, particularly the likes of Michael Smith, Big Dirk, Clemens, Heta, we've mentioned, Gurney, even Devon Peterson, who was disappointing until day 4. So we saw him really quite getting into it, Pieman, to be honest, and ahead of the UK Open, it's just a sign to me that they might be getting into the flow of things now. And, the season's only 4 days old as we speak, so fair play to them.
Well, look, the depth of quality in the PDC is as good as it's ever been, and I think it's generally accepted that we have this big 3, and then we have a tier below them, and then a tier below that as well. Look, I think you're right in what you're saying with Cullen and Clayton. I think they've poked their heads currently above, and they are the next 2 below that big 3.
But
certainly on recent form.
before the Worlds, Clayton and Cullen weren't even in the
No, they weren't.
To you and I, but they
if you turn around in November and said that Jonny Clayton and Joe Cullen would be the two men probably most backed in the Players' Championships, Jonny Clayton will be in the Premier League. It's been a real quick fire turn of events because these are guys who've been around for a while, but they've just suddenly taken that next step and they've taken it at the same time.
Yeah, so they've gone up 2 notches in one go, yeah. rather than a Michael Smith joining the big three or a Heta or a Gurney joining the big three. They've gone over two divisions, if you like.
Yeah, and it just shows that how quickly the landscape can change in darts. Really, I mean, if you go away for a few months, there's a bit of a shuffle, and like we're talking about this UK Open, you've got to be thinking that Van Gerwen's probably not going to come in as favourite. We could touch on that later. But he may well do. But I mean, even for that to be a discussion, if you rewind a year ago, you would think, wow, things must have changed a lot. And it's a rapidly changing sphere. But let's look at these players in the mid-range. Your traditional names that you're in a market that you're thinking about below the big three, your Gary Andersons, your Glenn Durrants, your Jose de Souzas, your Dimitri van den Berg, they had very mixed fortunes. And we could touch on the people who didn't fare as well. But the guys slightly below them, they were the ones that really impressed me. And I think at different stages, Gabriel Clemens today was fantastic. And he'd been threatening to do that, to be honest. Day 2, he put in a good performance and finally translated it into a semi-final with Jonny Clayton, which was nip and tuck right up until, it was 4-4, 5-4 on throw, and then Clayton got the key break. But he's showing that he could compete with the best. He didn't have an easy route through either, and I thought he did fabulously well on the day. Dirk van Duijvenbode, I've got to say, I'm normally quite reserved on my praise of Dirk van Duijvenbode because I think he's got a lot to prove. But I was extremely impressed with him today, day 4. I just thought he looked so assured. He wasn't bothered about who he was playing. He was turning in consistent ton averages, very, very sharp on his doubling. Definitely someone that is on my radar for the UK Open. And I think Daryl Gurney deserves a mention as well. I mean, he showed form at the World Championships, of course, got to the quarterfinals, beaten in a deciding leg by eventual world champion Gerwyn Price. Didn't really build on it at the Masters, but he certainly built on it this week. And he's another one on the results, you would say, a little bit unlucky to go out in the way he did on a couple of days, but put a good run together today. Good to see Daryl, putting in results that mirror his performances there. And Mervyn King, it wouldn't be a video if I didn't mention Mervyn King. Lost day 3 and day 4, he lost 6-5, having had a match start. So things could have looked very different for Mervyn King. And I don't think there's any signs that his form has disintegrated in the last week or two.
So we've got to mention the big three. I'll do it quickly. Van Gerwen did not make a quarterfinal on his first 3 days, and then he made a semi-final on the final day and got beat by Heta in that semi-final. I didn't see a lot of him in the first 3 days, to be honest. I don't know if he was even on the boards 1 and 2 streaming at all, but he was on day 4. It just looked hard work to me. It just looked hard work what he was doing, and don't get me wrong, he still got it, but yeah, it just looked like he was forcing it. Rasmer upset him when he was 2-0 down in, I think it was the quarterfinal. He had words with him. I didn't really like it. Rasmer is a bit strange, the way he plays and the way he behaves. And then he reeled off 6 legs in a spin and kind of put him off. That I didn't like that.
Rasmer was 2-0 up at the time.
He was 2-0 up, Pieman. And it was mid-leg. It was mid-leg of the 3rd leg where he had words. I didn't quite like it. Gerwyn Price only took part in days 1 and 2. It didn't go particularly well on either day. I think he won 2 games. Yeah, he went out first round day 1 and he won 1 game on day. So I think he won 1 or 2 games in 2 days.
He lost to Aaron Beanie as well, which no disrespect. I mean, that's quite a shocking result for Gerwyn. That
he won. Yeah, so he won the first round on day 1 and then he got beat by Anderson on day 2. He went out first round, but the reason for that has been given as an ear infection. That is not a good sign going into the UK Open. And then also I would just say about Snake as well, Peter Wright, who we just sound like a broken record what we say about him. But the darts that he played with on day 3, and I think he played with the same on day 4, were terrible. They looked ugly. He performed badly with that equipment. I thought some of the legs were absolutely abject, and I'm surprised. The 2 games that I saw him on the live stream play with these ugly, big-barreled, short-stem darts, I'm surprised on both occasions that he got through that game in question without changing his darts, because he has been known to change his darts mid-game. I'm surprised he persisted with him. I thought it was terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly on Van Gerwen, I mean, just the performances as well as the results. It wasn't just the results that were worrying. I mean, he beat Matthew Edgar in his first game on the first day, and he was lucky to win that game. Matt Edgar went with him all the way, and as we saw with Matt Edgar on all 4 days, unfortunately, he maybe chucked a game that he should have won, really. Questions over the closing stages of the games, but plenty of promise from Edgar. And then even on the second and third days, he was getting through these games like 6-5. You know, he was beating. I remember watching him beat Adam Hunt 6-5, and he was very fortunate to get through that game. He lost to the young Welsh player Louis Williams as well. You know, that was a real upset. Then Labanowskis cleaned the floor with him on the third day on Saturday. Better today, but even still, he was kind of scrambling through. It is not the performance of a favourite.
Laboured is the word.
It's not the performance of a favourite. You know, you want to, if you're getting with somebody that's as short as Van Gerwen is in the market, you want them to be, you know, addressing the board with confidence and you know, kind of giving you positive feelings that they've got to get the job done. With Van Gerwen, every game you watch him thinking, I'm not sure he's going to get through this game, and sometimes he will. His class will carry him through sometimes, but he's certainly not in a good place. He's not in the place that makes him favourite for these markets. So I think he has to be avoided. Going price, as you say, we don't know whether the ear infection played a huge part or a minor part in these performances. But what I did say beforehand is going price, he can be a bit sketchy in tournaments like these. If he's not feeling it, we've seen him kind of pack up before, and we've also seen
him in the Winter Series. He won a day on the Winter Series and then didn't come back the next day.
Yeah, and we've seen him sometimes lose to players that he should never lose to. So I don't know whether to read into it too much, but what I do know is with the short turnaround for the UK Open, I wouldn't be putting him up for that with any question marks over him. Peter Wright. Yeah, what could you say? I mean, there was a couple of ton averages, like really good averages across the 4 days, but God, there was some dross as well, real dross. And
he can do it, Pieman. He can.
Yeah,
he hit the most 180s on the tour last year, right? He's obviously got a high ranking. He's a former world champion. Peter Wright can do it, but from a betting perspective, and that's the words that come out of my mouth and yours are from a betting perspective. There's no way that you could back Peter Wright. No way. And he goes off single figure prices for these tournaments. There's just no chance.
No, it's disappointing. I mean, that Saturday he got to the last 16 and he lost to Glenn Durrant, and he played okay on Saturday, but even then it wasn't the performance that you would expect from someone of his caliber. So I think all 3 of these guys, I'm not saying that they're in positions where they can't turn up and win events. That when you've got that much class and you've also got question marks over how much they care about these TV events, but these non-televised events, if you will, sorry, but look, I couldn't be putting any of them up for the UK Open. I think it's the most wide open tournament we've had in a long time.
Yeah, agree. We could talk about a whole host of players, Pieman, but we'll just touch on what I call the youngsters. Obviously, there's one to start on. Callan Rydz got his first win on day 2. I know you've been a follower of his career so far. I mean, you've obviously got some thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I thought it was really well deserved. I had no fears over him when he got to the quarterfinals. To be honest, it was. He seems really comfortable in that kind of company. In some ways, more comfortable playing against good players than against your lesser names. And I don't know whether he. I think the reason I like Callan Rydz is because I feel like he's got the potential to be a big game player. I feel like he could rise to the occasion in these big tournaments. Really good to see him get a tournament under his belt. Beating Jonny Clayton in the final, no mean feat. We know about the form that Jonny Clayton's been in. It was a bit of a scrappy final, but make no mistake. Clayton gave him a bit of a sniff to get back into it for 7-7, and he took out a lovely finish. I can't remember the exact finish off the top of my head, but it was around
128. It was
128 mark. Yeah, I knew it was around there. A beautiful finish. Had to hit, did hit. Very, very good bottle shown, and he managed to close it out as well. I just think he's I think he's a really interesting contender because a lot of these other guys, they might be a little bit older or they might have had a slightly different path. He's done it the right way. He's gone through the development tour, successful. He's gone through the challenge tour, successful. He's come on the main tour. He's shown a few flashes. Now he comes in, new year, wins an event. That's a massive step in his career. We know that he's progressing in the right way. Now the next step for him is to turn up to one of these TV tournaments and make a quarterfinal, semi-final. That's what I want to see. So really excited to see how Callan Rydz gets on, and I was very impressed with the way he did it. And
a couple of other youngsters. I know we mentioned Louis Williams from Wales. He beat MVG on his first ever day as a tour card holder. I mean, that's crazy. There was Keane Barry beat Gary Anderson on the Sunday, and he also played MVG and played okay for two or three legs, I thought. And then another name as well to chuck out there, John Brown on the Sunday. I've not got his other days in details, but he beat Van der Voort and Jelle Klassen before going out to Labanowski. So some real talented youngsters, and I mean they are young as well, like university age, if you like.
Yeah, I mean that is one good thing we've got with the two at the moment. There's plenty of new names, new faces. It's always an exciting time of year to see which of the new faces are going to be able to make an impression. And as you say, Louis Williams, I mean, that first day, I know he beat Van Gerwen, but he also beat Dimitri Vandenberg and Kim Huybrechts on the same day. Talk about announcing yourself. I mean, that was extremely impressive the way he did that. And he was a bit unlucky to go out to Jonny Clayton, who was a finalist in the end on the day. So he'll take plenty of heart from that. He looks like he could compete. Oh, you could name a lot of them, couldn't you? Keane Barry is one that's been knocking on the door. There's no secret about Keane Barry. Everyone's fully aware of his talent. He's just got to find a way of doing it more regularly on these events. Big year for him. I think he might be a kind of player that we see appearing in a semi-final or a final at some point in the year. Oh yeah, I could name them all day. We won't go on too much longer on that front.
We'll speak about some of the players that didn't do so well. I think the chief one in that is for me Simon Whitlock. I know you put him up as someone to what, but he's not had a good week. I mean, when you look back on it, it'll tell you that Dave Chisnall's won a few games, but I thought when he got to the games that he, when he needed to push on against someone that was to his level or a higher standard, he's fell short there. Dimitri Vandenberg was a surprise competitor, never mind a surprise winner, because he had knee surgery, and then he turned up here as a bit of a surprise. He only won one game all week, Dimitri Vandenberg, unfortunately for him. So, yeah, any of the not so good nature for you, Pieman?
Yeah, well, the three that you say are the ones that stand out, to be honest. Dimitri, he'll be wondering whether he's rushed back, won't he, from that knee surgery? I mean, no one expected him to be competing at this. He obviously doesn't want to miss the events. He wants to push on now. He's a Premier League player. He probably wants to get some games in before he starts his Premier League campaign. It's understandable, but could he have just given these events a miss? Turned up at the UK Open, take your chance, Easy with hindsight, but he didn't look himself this week. He didn't. And Dave Chisnall, yeah, I agree. I watched him play Matt Edgar today, and I thought it was Edgar completely outplayed him. And again, last leg was a problem. But yeah, he just didn't look at it. Chizzy, his scoring's normally the thing that separates him, and it wasn't there. So, I mean, another player that'll be towards the top of the market that I couldn't be having for the UK Open. There was a few players that'll be disappointed, I think, but you're probably going down into the lower realms now. I think that of the big boys, the ones you mentioned, is about right.
Couple of highlights for me. James Wade wearing actual Reebok classics throughout the 4 days. I mean, it's just something you're not used to seeing. Black trousers, black shoes.
He just does what he wants really now, Wade, doesn't he? He's been around so long, he just doesn't care now.
It really tickled me. There was a 9-darter every day. Every day there was a 9-darter.
Phenomenal.
Michael Smith hit a 9-darter about 2 on Thursday. It only starts at 2 o'clock, and he hit a 9-darter. Unfortunately, none of the 9-darters were on the streaming board. Of which
the problem is when there's 16 boards. I mean, we're seeing all this great action on the streaming boards, but there's 14 other matches going on at the same time. So I mean, it's very tough. You're trying to keep your finger in all the pies, aren't you? Trying to watch them all, but it's difficult. I
mean, I paid just on the PDC TV. I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but I paid my $2.99, and I've watched two games virtually every 10 minutes a game every 10 minutes between 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock ish every day. I think it's been superb. The one thing I would say, if there is any PDC employees still watching at half an hour into our video, semi-finals playing at the same time.
Yeah,
that don't work for me because I can't watch both. I would rather watch one. They can be on separate boards because I know they're playing on that board. But show board 1 on stream 1, finish, and then show board 2 on stream 2. Playing them simultaneously for me, it's not very helpful.
No, and I think that's you got to be thinking about it from the viewing perspective. They do a wonderful job. I mean, $2.99 for the tournament, the entire tournament. I don't think there's no sport that gives you that amount of value from their
about
streaming service
a day. I think.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And I couldn't knock what they're providing for that money. But yeah, an improvement would be to see the semis staggered. I mean, when you get into that end, that level of quality tournament, and you get into the end of it, you want to see every dart you can, don't you? And like tonight was a perfect example. We had Clayton Clemens going on at the same time as MVG Heta. I mean, and any darts fan wants to watch them both, don't they?
You try and watch both, and then you end up watching none.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. I mean, areas to work on, isn't there? I mean, more boards, more tournaments, and more expansion.
They've only been doing it 2 years, Pieman. Years ago. 2.5 years ago, or say 3 years ago today, these tournaments wouldn't have been on TV at all, or online or viewed at all by anyone. You'd have just got the results at the end of the day. So fair play to them for opening it up. But there's always improvements to be made, isn't there, Pieman?
Yeah,
so. Right, well, we'll be back later in the week with a look to the UK Open, and this is kind of the form book. The recent form book's been covered, so we'll be back straight in with betting picks. They didn't go particularly well at the Super Series, but I would caveat with saying we were on absolutely humongous prices, so only we did a couple of quid a day each.
I'm looking forward to the UK Open. I think we've got some really good indicators now for this market. I think all 3 favourites are out of form or beatable. Just think we'll have some props, we'll have some matches, insight to go on. I think it's going to be a great tournament.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and like I say, another big weekend of sport coming up. So stay tuned to Doubles and Trebles, and we'll be back soon with more content. So thanks very much for watching.
Cheers. Guys.